Hello everyone, welcome to the Power 365 Power Series Episode 3. If you haven't already, make sure you watch the intro call from Tom so it gives you an overview of what we're achieving, and also the first episode of Build from Alex Jones on environments and solutions. Today I'm going to cover tables, so adding basic out-of-the-box tables and best practices with adding forms and views. We'll also create a table or an entity if you like, and show you some best practices with that as well. To begin, I'm going to add the basic account entity, which is out of the box, and show you some best practices when adding an entity directly to a solution. In these solutions, you can see that Alex has kindly created in the previous episode. We're going to navigate to the tables and choices. If I open up this solution, you can see it is empty. I'm then going to click on add existing, navigate to table, and inside table we can use a search box here to search for account, or alternatively you can scroll up and down on the tables that are displayed. So I'm going to highlight the account and click next, and rather than click include all objects or include table metadata, which is really bad practice for solutions when it comes to deployment, we're just going to select just the objects that we need. In this case, I know that we're going to be using forms, so I'm going to select the main account form, and then I'm also going to move across to the views, and I'm also going to select the advanced find form, and then I'm going to select the active accounts form for now. Now click add, and then these will then be added to my solution. Now the account table has been added to the solution, I can open up the account, and then here you will see various properties that we can extract and change things within the account entity in itself. But the first practice I want to show you here is actually changing the form. So by default, this is the default form out of the box. What that means, if there are any updates from Microsoft, this will directly update this form. One thing that most users do incorrectly is they'll just edit this form directly, and then when that does go into production or live system, that will update and cause issues in the future. So the first thing that we can do here is if we open up the form, and then we can save as, give it a new name. In this case, I'll call it account Power Series put a description on. And save. Once that is saved, we can then navigate back to the solution, and then what you'll see, if I open up the forms, you'll see there are now two forms. Best practices for me, I'll then remove that from the existing form, so I can highlight the one that we don't want no more because we've already done the copy, and we can now remove this from the solution. This saves anybody then going into that form and editing it, which is not needed, because we can work from this account here. I'm going to do that also for the views. So if I navigate back to the accounts, click on views, I've also got my active accounts and my active advanced views. So I'll do that quickly. As you can see, I've now done that for both of the views, so I'm just going to remove them from the solution, and that will leave me with the views that I have now created. Now it's best practice to do this for all of the entities that are out of the box, so leads, accounts, contacts, bookable resource, bookings, bookable resources, anything that you experience like that, it's best practice to do that, and the sooner you do it, the better it is for the project. However, the next stage I'm going to show you is creating a table. So yes, we can use the bookable resource booking that's out of the box, but for this purpose we're going to create a new one and build everything for fresh just for this project, so it's going to be bespoke. So the first thing I want to do is click on new, click table, and here you'll be presented with display name, plural name, and a description. So in here I want to call this bookable resource booking, We could add a description if we like. And we can enable attachments if we wish to do so. But on this occasion, we're not, because any attachments we want to put through SharePoint. And you see now we've now got the schema name. So it's also best practice to have lowercase on the schema names. Now the entity type is standard, so we want to keep this as standard, but we can also have activities, which we'll come to at a later episode. The ownership is a user or team that we want to keep to that because we need to show owners of the status. We don't need to put any images in yet, we can do that again at a later episode. And then we have at the bottom the security settings that we want to put into this particular table. So for now, we don't want to add any track changes or anything like that, but we do have the ability to turn auditing on and leverage quick forms if available, etc. for this other instance. But for now, what we're going to do is just keep it very generic out of the box. Click Save. This is now going to add the table to the solution. And once we've added that table, we can go in there and then customize our views and forms. Now the bookable resource booking is created, we can see it also adds default forms, default views, and also default columns. So these columns change depending on what type of table you choose, and because we used a user and team, this will add extra fields such as the owner and the statuses and dates to the relative table. So now what we want to do is open up a form. So I'll navigate over to a form. Again, best practices, change the name of the form because we don't want to be calling it information. If I abbreviate this and call it BRB Power Series, and then in the description, main form. It just helps with any users that come in and need to make any changes. If I save, what I now need to add to here, so I'm going to show you a few things. I'm going to add a few fields, but I'm not going to add everything because we could be here all day. And then what you'll see in the next episode is the pre-populated bookable resource booking. But what I do want to show you is adding a lookup field. So yes, we have the status field. So we're going to use the status field based on the record being active or inactive. But what I also want to add is a bookable status. This is for Canvas app reasons. So the first things first, if I come into my app, I can add a new column here, and I want to go to a lookup field, and you can select lookup, and then down at the bottom you can see the related table. However, what you will notice is you can't create another entity from here like you can create the other fields. So what I need to do on this point is go back and repeat what we did earlier with the bookable resource bookings, but create another table. So if I click back to tables, click add new, add a new table, and here I want to add a booking status because it's going to be a reference status. And what you can see down the bottom as well, it changes the plural name, which is what we do not want. So if we remove the plural name, and we'll just keep that as booking status. Add a description so it helps with users. And then in here, what I now want to do is change the schema, but I now want to change the record ownership as an organization. If I click save, that has now created its own booking status. And in here with your forms, you'll see that it's not created anything like that for you. So that's the difference between creating a user and a organization. It just doesn't create anything for you because it's for reference data purposes. If I now navigate back to my bookings, I can create fields from here. So I can go into columns or I can go into my forms. I like to do it within my forms. Some people do it different. There's no right or wrong way. It's probably quicker to do it from the columns, but I like to put them on and build as I go. So now I'm going to add a new table column. and then here you will find I can go to the lookup and find my related table, which will be booking status. And again, the schema name populates itself when you save, but what I do need to do is put a display name, so I can put booking status, and you see it populates the schema name again. I'm going to change that. Status of the booking. In this case, I'm going to leave this optional because it may not be needed on creation. And for the help of the Canvas app build, we're going to turn it off for now so we can do our testing, and then we'll probably come back at the end and turn this on once required. So I'll click save. What you'll now see on the left hand side is my booking status. So I can drop that in if I click it, and you see it now appears in my screen. So now I've added the booking statuses, I'm now going to add a start date and an end date, and on top of that I'll also add a duration choice, so all day, AM or PM. These are just for demonstration purposes, and then I'll add the rest at a later date, which you'll see in the next episode, rather than me have to create the whole form just right now. So first things first is we want to add an end and a start date. If I click on new column table, I'll put in the title, so start date, of resource, and here I want to click on date and time, so I can either click directly here or I can click on the arrow and it will ask me if I want date and time or date only. For this purpose I want date and time, and then again with the format we can change that if we wanted to, and the behavior I want this to be simple, so it's not calculated or a roll up. And then in this one, I want this to be required because obviously we don't want the booking if it's not going to put a date in there. Keeping to our best practices, I'll change the schema name. And then I also want to keep the time zone to user local, not time zone independent, so it works in hand with the computer that the users are using at the time. For now, I'm leaving the security alone, but what I do want to do is enable sorting on the dashboard, and I don't want it to appear in the global dashboard, but I do want it to be sortable. So this, on any views, you can then sort by date required. I can then click save. I'm going to repeat that for end date. And then once they're in, you can see I can click on them, click start date and end date. I'll just put that one above here. And the last one I want to show you is adding a choice field. So a choice or duration, so we're going to have all day, AM or PM. Arguably this could be reference data, just like the bookable status, but we know there's not going to be anything else other than all day, AM or PM, unless somebody invents a different time zone. So like before, we can go on new table, and what we can do is we can add a choice. In here you can see there's behavioural, so again just like the other fields, we've got simple or calculated. We want to keep these simple. Optional, we want to make these required because we want to know one or the other. Yes, we want them to be searchable, and yes, we want those to be global choices, so they can be on other forms as well. Here I get to select which choices I want to use, but I haven't created them yet. So what I can do is click new choice, and then here I can put duration, choice, and inside the labels I can put AM, 1, PM, all day. So you'll now see that that's added to the choice, and for default what I want to do is just put this on all day, so then people can change it afterwards if necessary. Now if I populate the information like before, just for best practices, we'll keep schema name down, and yes, I want this to be sortable. So we click save. So we've now added a column from the in-form view. We can also do this on the out-form view. What you'll see now is we've got duration. I can now add this to the form. So now you can see I've added some simple fields. There are other fields in here that we can add, such as is billable, the resource, the project they're related to, the actual booking that they're related to, any opportunities or anything like that. We can add all those fields in, but I'm going to do that at a later date. But what I'm going to show you next is actually manipulating the form to make it look better for the users. So you can see in here we have a section. What I want to do, I want to split this section into 2 columns just to make it a lot easier. And the owner, I'm going to put at the top here in the command bar, so it's out of the way and it's prominent on every form that we select through for the tabs. For this time, I'm going to add another tab just for reference so you can see, and this new tab will pre-populate at a later date, but I'm just going to label the new tab as other details, and then we'll pre-populate that as we go forward. And then tab name. Again, it's good to keep a good naming convention, so if it comes to JavaScript or anything like that, you know that you can hide and show tabs, and you'll know that if it's all lowercase, then you don't have to keep coming backwards and forwards and trying to find the names. And it's just good for best practices just to keep it all the same. We've got our general tab, so I'm going to keep that labeled as general. And now we've got is our name. Our name is required. Now on this front, what I want to show you is to turn that into an auto number, and we can't do that through the pane that we have here. So you can see I can change the name, but I can't actually change the type of field that it is. So if I click save, go back to the columns, so I click forms, click on columns, and then I find name. You can see it's the primary name column. Now if I open this up, we have the option of single line of text or auto number. So I'm going to put auto number, and I'm going to change the name to reference. To make that auto populate, I'm going to turn off business required because this is going to do it itself. And then we're going to add a prefix number. So in here we can do a date prefix, we can make it custom. So if we wanted to, you can see it's sequence of 4 seed values, or we can do a date prefix, so it starts with the date and put the 4 seed values afterwards. So for this example, I'm just going to use a string prefix, and in the prefix here, I'm just going to go bookable resource booking, and then we'll put 6 digits in there to make it a little bit bigger, and then I want to add 2 zeros here to make the seed value a little bit bigger as well. So I click save, that will change. And what I can do is then navigate back to my form. And you can see that the required field's now gone off, and I want to change the name here, and I want to put reference number as the title. Now again, this one can either go at the top, out the way, depending on how long the naming convention is, but we'll keep that at the top so it's out the way. And now we are going to play with our fields inside the different sections. So you can see I've split this into 2 columns. So on the left hand side I want to put the details, and on the right hand side I want to put the dates. So you can see we're starting to make it a little bit more user friendly for the users. Additionally, we can add more in here, so we've got subgrids, we've got different sections, we can go 4 column sections, but it's really, when you are designing your table, you need to think about the size of the screens that the user is going to be using. The smaller the screen, the auto render will automatically put the columns in, so it will take it from 4 to 3 to 2, and some screens might not look the same. So do try and stick to 2 or 3 at a push when it comes to using your interfaces. So I'll click save, and then that's adding a bookable resource. Now I've exited the form, what we can see is I've landed on the bookable resource booking forms, and the last thing I need to check with my form is that the users can see the actual form when it's added to an app. So if I click on the 3 dots, click on form settings, it'll load up the form settings page, and you can see the security roles here is set to everybody. If you wanted to set it to specific security groups, you can click the security group roles and then select accordingly the user groups that you want to do that for. But in this case, I'm going to keep it as everyone. The form order, so we're going to make sure it's the main form and it's at the top. At the moment we've only got one form in here, so it's at the top, but just check if you create any more, you know, the order that you want them to fall back on. Likewise, you've got your fallback forms, which is automatically a fallback. So if an app tries to open up any entity that it's not added to, it will fall back straight to this one if the user has the relative security permissions. And then the form access checker allows you to see what security roles have access to the form and what forms they have access to. So I've not changed anything in there, but that's just putting it out there for security layer. Now I'm going to amend a view. So we're going to navigate to the views, and I'm just going to do one, so you can see the active bookable resource bookings. So I'm going to open up the view, and by default I want to create a new one, so I'm going to click save as active bookable resource bookings. It's a little bit of a long name, but I'm going to keep the momentum going and put power series. I can put form for power series, and then I can save. Once it loads up, you can see I've now got my reference, I've got my created on, and then I can add all the different fields that are available to me within that entity. So in this case, let's just put end date, start date, and booking status, because we've already had them in, and then I can drag and drop on the top to then move them around if I put created on at the end. Likewise, I can come and sort by different references, so I can sort by start date or sort by reference, so I can remove the reference and then they'll only sort by start date, and I can change the order of that as well, so it can be ascending or descending, so newer to older or older to newer. I can also come in here and change the filter, so at the moment these are only showing me active filters. I can edit filters here and add further filters in, so if I wanted to put start date equals or is greater than or equal than today, or on or before, or on or after, I could hard code that in there so it just is on or after a specific date, or I can go is in the next 7 days, so you can change your views accordingly. But I'm not going to change the filter on this one. So if I save that, I have now modified a view for users to be able to see in their app. I will now continue to add the relevant tables and link the bookable resource booking to those tables. So stay tuned for the next series, and I hope you've enjoyed it.